this is 1 liter of fresh seawater. And even though this is clear and not very harmful, you can taste it. It's a bit salty, of course. Even though this is clear and tastes just a bit salty, it's full of life. There is about 10 to 100 billion viruses living in a liter of seawater. Bacteria in it, archaea in it, protists living in it. It's full of life. And these viruses here, they live in the bacteria, as bacteriophage, for instance. They have a regulatory function. If you imagine the ocean, the sea, as a source of life, all these microbes living in there, protists living in there, there's algae living in there, tiny pieces of life. If they live close to the surface and if they live on photosynthesis, they have the light and they swim in a soup of nutrients in the seawater, so they have all they need. And they could potentially multiply and multiply and multiply. If there would be not another force which would regulate them in their numbers. And this is what viruses are doing. We know about, for instance, bloom of algae. When they mass produce, we have carpets of blooming algae in the sea, which you can even see from the moon. And that would be quite a big problem if these viruses wouldn't be straight away also multiplying and killing these microbes. If the bacteria are destroyed, they're also fertilizing the sea, because all the leftovers are there to be used then by other organisms. So the viruses have this very important function in regulating the basic layer of the global food chain, and also the stabilization of the chemistry of the world, because these microbes in the ocean are responsible for 50% of our oxygen in the air. And the oxygen in the water, which is necessary for a lot of other life, like fish, would be taken away by this algae bloom, and these fish would have nothing to breathe. So this function of the viruses here is very beneficial for the whole ecosystem of the planet. And this is a topic of this movie. I want to give certain images, alternative images about viruses, which tell a different story than the one that we are usually hear, that there's a particle out there, potentially dangerous, infecting us and doing a lot of harm. That's an exception. The general thing about viruses is that there are an unbelievable number of viruses. There's an unbelievable number of microbes everywhere, in the soil, in our guts, in the water, and the more of them we have, the better they can regulate each other and produce wealth, richness and sanity. Another function that these viruses have in the ocean, but basically everywhere, is to, because there's so many of them, and they're always evolving, they're always mutating, they're always changing, and viruses can be seen also as transferring genetic material from one organism to the other, like between one bacteria and the other. And because in general, a virus is nothing else but a tiny piece of genetic material, genetic information. If you imagine this huge amount of viruses all around us, you can imagine them as being a pool of genetic information, a huge reservoir of possibilities of expressing yourself with genetic material that is available, that is all around us. and as we later will see, which is not just around us, which is also in us, and which can move more or less freely from the surroundings, through us, into us, and out of us again. Talking about viruses, we have to consider that there's different perspectives on them. And one topic of this short video will be to raise awareness of how we interpret data, especially in the realm of viruses. Because we have to make a difference between kind of the data, the original data that we gain out of experiments, for instance, and the lenses through which we look at the data. We call that interpretation. And we always interpret things according to worldviews or preconceptions that we have. And in this video I would like to present phenomena in the world of viruses with a different lens, with a lens that is not so often heard in academic science, a lens which is trying to stay with the phenomena, not interpreting them too much, or if interpreting, then through a different dogma. Not the dogma of separation, which is underlying the normal academic science, like the virus out there trying to attack me, but more a lens of connectedness, trying to see the interrelationship of all beings and how they work within each other. So the first kind of difference would be we have this virus out there kind of doing something, and in that perspective the question is, well, for instance, if I get an infection, am I playing no part in this at all? So is the active part the virus, or what is actually happening with myself? Do I also play a part in it? And so at least we have there a second perspective, the perspective of ourselves. We always have to look also at the context of the person getting an infection. If we look at a normal flu, like coronaviruses or influenza viruses, which cause our normal flus. And now looking at myself, when I observe myself, what is actually the situation of me getting a flu? If I don't think like I'm going to the tube and there's other people who may have certain viruses, and so it's contagious and I get infected. In that image, I don't even play a role. I'm kind of very passive in it. But what is the active role? Or is there a possibility to see an active role? And looking at myself, what is actually happening when I get a flu? I can notice that I don't always get a flu. And sometimes other people having flus, even people I see a lot have flus, and I'm not getting a flu. Sometimes I'm getting a flu and I don't even know where it comes from, because I wasn't aware of anyone meeting anyone who has the flu. So there's certain conditions in myself that make it possible to get a flu. And if I'm honest and looking at myself, at my situation, when I'm getting a flu, I can see that there's a certain pattern, which is always the same when I'm getting a flu. And that is a situation where I kind of live my life in a more or less unconscious way, and without even noticing, I have become kind of dull and not inspired. I've been lost kind of in routine. I'm having kind of not very positive thoughts. I lost my motivation. I'm just kind of dragging myself to work or do certain things that don't really fulfill myself. So it's a situation where I don't feel really good, especially concerning my morals, my energy. So my energy level is low, and kind of I lost interest in life. I'm kind of tired, I'm not looking after myself very well, I'm maybe not sleeping enough, or drinking too much or eating unhealthy food too much, because I don't really care a lot. I just kind of live along. And then suddenly I catch a cold. And of course, when we catch a cold, most of the time it comes as a surprise. We think, oh, damn it, now I've got this cold, I have to, can't go to work, I had all these plans, and so I have to pick up the children from school. It always comes as a nuisance, but quite often after these 3 days or week or however long it took, we notice actually the world did continue without us and didn't fall apart, and we are different persons afterwards. We gained this new energy that we needed. We kind of emerging back into life full of joy and positivity, and have new good ideas about life. And so this kind of dip and this kind of time of the flu or the infection is a huge possibility. It's a time for us to slow down, to think about what's important, to finally find the time to do certain things like reading a book that one wanted to read for a long time but didn't manage because there was too many other things. So it's actually quite a beneficial situation. And it doesn't usually come as a surprise. If one is aware of these situations where one kind of feels low and isn't really up to life so much, that's a time where one can catch a flu. So this is a different picture. This is not being attacked by a virus and then you can do nothing else but going through this flu. It's something where the responsibility of how you lead your life, how you are, how you look at yourself suddenly plays a role. And I find it very interesting that when we talk about a virus and how a virus lives, we're talking about hosts. If we have a cold, we are the host, we're hosting these viruses. And staying with that image of the host, I think it's actually quite appropriate, because to be a host, you have to welcome the guests. You have to prepare yourself to accept them, to welcome them. You have to take them in. So that it's not that kind of a guest jumps into you and into your household, into your living room, and does something you don't want. For being a host, you're actually welcoming something in, and then you're trying to be a good host. I'm not saying that we are actively inviting viruses to come, but the host image helps to understand that that you actually prepare the conditions for viruses to be happy in yourself. And if you don't want viruses to come, then you're also responsible to prepare yourself in a way that they don't come. But usually, when they come, you prepared conditions for them to be able to live a life where they can cause, for instance, a flu. And I don't know if you see these seals in the background. These wonderful sea creatures are, so to say, reservoirs of influenza viruses. Also, the seabirds are reservoirs of influenza viruses. They can get the same flu viruses than we can get. So these flu viruses, they are everywhere. And it's an illusion to think that you catch the flu in the tube with other people coughing. You can potentially catch that flu everywhere. It is everywhere. Influenza viruses are all around us. They're probably also in you at some time. So if you want to get a flu, you can get a flu thanks to viruses. Let's look at viruses a bit closer. There's very different groups of viruses, families of viruses, which are all quite different from each other. So we can't generalize a virus is this and that. But a certain group of viruses, the retroviruses, they are very interesting because they show a certain behavior which is studied quite well, which again can give us a different picture of what viruses are. These retroviruses, they contain two enzymes, and one of them is called the reverse transcriptase, the other one is called integrase, and they enable the virus to be able, when it's entered a cell, to inscribe their DNA into the DNA, or in this case it's an RNA, to reverse their RNA into a DNA molecule and integrate these sequence of DNA into the host genome. And that's something really interesting, because this opens the question of what a virus really is. Because now you can choose where do you start to look at the virus, where does, sort of to say, its life start. Because if it has this property to completely integrate into the host's genome, it kind of disappears into the genome of the host. And this is the case with the HI virus, the HIV, which has to do with AIDS, symptoms of AIDS. It can happily live in the DNA of the host, basically the whole life of the host, without ever causing the AIDS symptoms. And actually there's studies out. Here, this is a study from 2017 where scientists chose 8,000 people and screened their blood to see what kind of viruses are within their blood. And they've all been healthy people. Healthy people who didn't know about any infections. And they could find all kinds of viruses living with them, which included HIV and, for instance, herpes viruses, but also many, many other viruses, all living inside them without causing any problems, causing any diseases or symptoms which we think are connected with these viruses. So it's actually quite normal and healthy, and part of our internal virome. So if we think about this HI virus, it lives in, or can live in, the DNA of a human being. And only in some cases it kind of moves out of this DNA again into the cell where it can reproduce, and then it can also leave again the body. I think this is a beautiful image of what viruses really are. They are pieces of DNA or RNA, genetic information, which doesn't really belong to anything. It belongs to life itself. It can be out there in the environment, it can be in us, in the cells, and it can also kind of disappear in our own DNA. So if it is in our DNA, it is us. You can't really say if it is part of your DNA, it's even inherited in your DNA, that this virus is an independent own entity. It is part of us in this case, and it can leave us. Or let's say it's not part of us, but we are part of the genetic diversity that is all around us. So this genetic pool of possibilities can be out there, can be in us, goes through us, goes out us again. So again, what is the HI virus if it is part of our DNA? It is us. It's nothing else. It is part of us. And so it is very difficult to say what a virus is. Is it something alive? Is it something separate from us? Is it our own entity? But if it is part of us and we take that serious, then it is also us who is deciding what is happening with that virus. And now we come to the question if that is connected with worldview or with certain dogmas that we have as preconceptions. So the question is, do scientists have a worldview? Yes, they have, definitely. And I want to demonstrate that with just reading a few sections from kind of normal, popular books from good scientists about viruses. This one here is from Dorothy Crawford. She was professor at University of Edinburgh. And by describing what a virus is, we can notice here, and it's just more or less a random section I'm choosing, how many words she uses, I would say without intention, but they reveal that there's a certain way of looking at viruses. I just read. Viruses parasitize all living things, often to the detriment of their hosts, but they do not have it all their own way. All plants and animals, however small or primitive, have evolved ways of recognizing and fighting these microbic invaders. So for most viruses, each round of infection is a race against time. They must reproduce before the host either dies or its immune system recognizes and eliminates them. Then their offspring have to find new hosts and infect and repeat the process ad infinitum in order for the species to survive. Even viruses that have learned the trick of dodging immune attack and live happily inside their hosts for its lifetime must eventually move on to avoid dying with the host. And of course it's a popular book, it's not like a scientific paper, but still, this is a very good scientist. And clearly in this just short paragraph, there's many words which reveal a certain mindset that is behind how she looks at viruses. And it's just an example, it's how science looks at viruses. Like it says, I mean, the concept of a parasite is already containing a worldview. It's containing already that we think there's something out there and it's attacking us. It's doing something with the host that the host doesn't want to do. Then it says invaders. That's the same gesture again. Invading means that's actually rhetorics of war. Someone attacking. Then it says avoiding, to survive, as if that virus has a will of its own, wanting to survive. Just to show this is not just one person doing it, everyone is doing it. Just another short example. This is a very amazing book, Frank Ryan, Virusphere. Let us remember ourselves that viruses are not sentient. They do not think ahead and plan a course of action. That is very neutral. I agree with that sentence. He says viruses don't have a will of their own, but still he continues with words which contradict what he just said. What drives them is also primal. Survival in the battle to gain entry to the host's environment. So I'm asking him, or anyone, how can someone be driven by something, if it doesn't have a will of its own? Viruses don't have a will of their own. They're just tiny fragments of genetic material. This is the sole purpose of a virus, which surely encapsulates at primal level the purpose of every living being on Earth, to battle tooth and nail for its own survival, and to reproduce itself in the cruel, unfeeling arena of nature. That's war rhetorics and nothing else. This has little to do with science, because science actually is about studying phenomena, and phenomena as just taking as themselves, they are without interpretation. They are neutral. They don't tell you if there's a struggle for survival, if there is a battle. They just show you the virus is doing this and that. like the HI virus. It can be in our cells, it can be outside, and it can be in our DNA. There is nothing in that data saying that the virus is an invader. That's an interpretation through the dogma of separation. I want to show you a graph which is, you can get this in the internet everywhere. It's public. It's a result of the Human Genome Project. In 2001, for the first time, the human genome was deciphered. So we know everything that is within the genome and what its purpose is, except that we don't really know what its purpose is. Then the big discovery was that the vast amount of genetic material within our DNA has a purpose which we don't know yet. That's why the scientists called them junk DNA. That's not a very humble description of it. They should have just said, we don't understand yet what it's there for. And the other discovery was that almost up to 50% of our own genetic material is originating from viruses. So most of or a large extent of our own DNA is viral DNA. What does that actually signify? It means that within human evolution, over the time we integrated viral DNA. So every contact with virus, every infection with the virus, every epidemic kind of was important, was part of the human evolution. And I think that's what the data suggests is our evolution. The human being or any other creature would not have been able to evolve to what it is today without the constant contact with viruses. Because viruses are nothing else but a huge pool of genetic possibilities. And if we need it, if we want it, the information, the genes are there to be used. And that is something that we actually know from own experience. It's just as in this image of that our own DNA has viral information in it. So within evolution, we always took in this information. We can see that also in every infection, even in a biography of a person, like with the childhood diseases, like the measles. If a child gets the measles, and let's say it's a normal infection, not a complication, then after that infection, the child is very different. It made a step in its personality. It changed a bit. So we have this correlation or similarity between our whole evolution and also the human biography, where viruses can help us to change, to become new, to renew ourselves. So the world is not our enemy, and viruses are not our enemy. We are part of this evolutionary process. Viruses and evolution, evolution and action, and we being part of it. We are hosting evolution. And talking about this dogma of separation and how to overcome it, we have to realize that we using certain concepts like which I was reading from Ryan, for instance, where we constantly interpret kind of these phenomena through a certain lens. And this is the lens of separation, the lens of actually war, of excluding something from us which is actually part of us. And this is something not very healthy. And we can't do that forever. Because if we exclude something from us, if we try to fight it, if we try to make war with something that is actually part of us, then we will not succeed. And this is amazing that the viruses actually are teaching us this amazing connectivity, that we are part of this viral world and it's part of our own evolution. So even in biology, we can find that we are not just entities which are kind of within our skin, but that we are entities that are in us and also around us. And we internalize certain elements, and certain elements are outside of us. And that's on a biological level. These viruses float through us, they are everywhere. But it's actually the same with everything in life. For instance, thoughts. Like when I have a certain thought, the question is that my individual personal thought? No, it is not. Quite often it is not. If I read some thoughts by Darwin, a book by Darwin, I take these kind of thoughts and I have them also. So we share the same thoughts. So also kind of thoughts go through me. Feelings go through me. Like I showed in the other video about plants. There are certain feelings expressed in gestures and I can feel them inside. Also we share this wealth, this richness of soul expressions. So on the biological level, on a soul level, but also on a spiritual level, we are beings of interbeing, of interconnectedness. So the question is, why are we so afraid of viruses? What is behind that fear of the virus? And my guess would be that it is because these viruses are invisible, they're out there, they're everywhere, and we can't control them. They are a part of us which is part of the darkness in us, the realm which we don't have control of. In psychoanalysis, this would be a repression. If we're trying to exclude something which is part of us and pretend it's not there. And this is what we're doing at the moment with viruses. We're trying to fight something that actually is part of us and is beneficial for us as long as we integrate it. So we must learn to embrace, to welcome the virus, to regard viruses as part of us, as part of the environment, as part of this interbeing.